Aaron and I want to start with a really big, heartfelt first bite thank you. We have been so encouraged by your kind word, your messages, your glowing reviews of First Bite. This has been a labor of love for the last year and a half, and we are grateful for y'all being on the First Bite journey with us and supporting us, because we work full time, and this is a full-time gig on top of it. And we do it with joy because we understand that the world of early intervention pediatrics needs evidence in it. So we sweet talked the folks with speechtherapypd.com, and as a thank you giveaway, we have come up with a free pod course subscription. So once we hit 130 iTunes written reviews, we're going to pull another name out of the hat, probably with the assistance of an ever so handsome goose and a bear. And that person will get a free pod course subscription. So over 175 hours of continuing ed plus 19 new continuing hours each month. And there's a new episode every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every other Thursday, and the short course, 9 series long, All Things Ethics with Elise. And that's our way of giving back. So thank you. So please keep the reviews coming. We only have a few more to go, but once we hit 130, then we will pull that name out of a hat. Happy 2020. Thank you for joining us on the journey. And seriously, y'all rock. Thank you. Hey, so by now, I'm hoping that you've heard about the brand new pod course subscription that Speech Therapy PD has rolled out. For $79 a month, you get over 175 hours of ASHA continuing education with 19 new episodes a month. That's fantastic. Well, they want to make sure that you also know we have a brand new coupon code. So the coupon code is F as in first, B as in bite, followed by the number 20, FB20. And that brand new coupon code will give you $20 off the pod course subscription. So you get 175 hours of continuing ed plus an average of 19 new hours a month, all for $59 a year. And we cover everything from early intervention to schools to adults to ethics. So be sure to type in F as in first, B as in bite, and then the number's 20. Enjoy your coupon, or as my kinfolk say, enjoy that coupon.
Hey there, listener. This is Dr. Dakota Sharp, audiologist, clinical assistant professor, and lifelong learner, inviting you to join me on an exciting new podcasting journey known as On the Ear. As you know, audiology is ever evolving, so it's critical as professionals that we learn and grow as well. Every other Thursday, On the Ear will be interviewing a variety of clinicians and researchers spanning a wide range of hearing and communication topics. From pediatrics to geriatrics, cochlear implants to vestibular, speech to hearing, and everything in between, this podcast will provide exciting insights that you can use in your clinical practice. Each episode of On the Ear is available for 0.1 ASHA CEUs when you complete the accompanying pod course through speechtherapypd.com.
Hi, folks, and welcome to First Bite, Fed, Fun, and Functional, a speech therapy podcast sponsored by SpeechTherapyPD.com. I am your host on this nerd venture, Michelle Dawson, MS, CCC, SLP, CLC, the All Things Peds SLP. I am a colleague in the trenches of home health early intervention right there with you. I run my own private practice, Heartwood Speech Therapy, here in Coletown, South Carolina. And I guest lecture nationwide on best practices for early intervention for the medically complex and fragile child. First Bite's mission is short and sweet, to bring light, hope, knowledge, and joy to the pediatric clinician, parent, or advocate.
By way of a nerdy conversation, so there's plenty of laughter too.
In this podcast, we cover everything from AAC to breastfeeding,
ethics on how to run a private practice,
pediatric dysphagia to clinical supervision,
and all other topics in the world of pediatric speech pathology. Our goal is to bring evidence-based practice straight to you by interviewing subject matter experts.
To break down the communication barriers so that we can access the knowledge of their fields.
Or, as a close friend says, to build the bridge.
By bringing other professionals and experts in our field together, we hope to spark advocacy, joy, and passion for continuing to grow and advance care for our little ones.
Every fourth episode, I join in. I'm Erin Forward, MSP, CCC, SLP, the Yankee by way of Rochester, New York transplant who actually inspired this journey. I bring a different perspective, that of a newish clinician with experience in early intervention, pediatric acute care, and nonprofit pediatric outpatient settings.
So sit back, relax, and watch out for all our squirrels and enjoy this geeky gig brought to you by SpeechTherapyPD.com. So today's episode is one that's near and dear to my heart because of the backstory. Y'all know I love a good story, so here it is. Once upon a time, about a year and a half ago, an SLP reached out to me with a few questions. She had a fighting spirit, a gentle heart, and a mama worry at least a mile wide. I loved her sweet Southern soul instantly, and we became nerdy friends. I basically made her adopt me in her friend group because she's wonderful. Um, this amazing SLP mama came from the world of acute, subacute adults and was working with her own little one's pediatric feeding disorder journey. A journey for him that had a lot of twists and turns. And I am humbled that I have been a tiny part of that joyful journey. Along the path towards healing, they found a few diagnoses that changed their stars and gave them guidance for the next steps to take. One of those steps was to the FOXG1 Research Foundation. Now, here's the most beautiful part of the story. This foundation that she told me about, a foundation that has become near to her heart and their son's journey. This foundation was created by two other mamas, Natasha Fitter, CEO, Head of Research, and Nicole Johnson, President and Head of Communications, while they were both on their respective journeys of healing for their children. The awesomeness of this cannot be understated or underestimated. These women, these mamas, overcame grief and sorrow of a diagnosis to work for their children and thousands of others to find a solution and give hope and light in the world. Now, that's a story that should be shared again and again and again. And I am grateful for my mama friend for allowing me to be a part of hers and for introducing me to Nasha and Nicole. So, ladies, thank you so much for coming on today. Hi.
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 Thank you for that introduction, Michelle. I'm already crying.
I do that to people. I make people cry and laugh. And if you know me long enough, you'll learn that I love the F-bomb and Jesus. And so, we balance it all out, right? It's all about the balance. I do love Jesus a little bit more than the F-bomb, but man, there are them days. Okay, so who is who? If Nasha, could you go first?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Nasha, and my daughter Amara is 4 years old now. She was diagnosed with FOXG1 syndrome when she was 9 months old after she started having seizures, which was, a pretty horrific thing to go through, especially watching like your little baby have these seizures and there's not much you can do. And I was very lucky at that time to have met Nicole, whose daughter is older and had been in the game a little bit longer and had really had a quite difficult diagnosis, just an odyssey of even getting the FOXG1 diagnoses. So I was lucky that I had someone who'd already been through it and was so positive a spirit that I could look up to and partner with and really build this foundation around fighting for a cure for our children.
Awesome. Okay. And Nicole?
Hi.
Tell us about you. Hi.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I'm Nicole Johnson. I like to say my maiden name if anyone recognizes from my former life.
Yes.
Like Nasha said, my daughter is a little older than her daughter. My daughter Josie will be 9 in November, which I can hardly believe. It's been 9 years already. And So she was diagnosed in 2014, and it took us 2 years to find her diagnosis, which is not so much the case for many of the new parents. Because FOXG1 is now on panels like the epilepsy panel or the microcephaly panel, which we could get more into, but parents are finding out their diagnosis pretty quickly. For me, it was different. It was 2 years of, why is my daughter not developing? At 6 months, she couldn't sit up. She wasn't rolling over. I remember she failed her 6-month pediatric milestone test with flying colors. And, but then 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and she still wasn't doing these things. And she's, like I said, going to be 9 next month, and she's still not doing these things. So, my greatest fears did come true. She did have a real disorder that prevented her from developing. So Josie is at the severe end of FOXG1 syndrome, which we could get more into, of the spectrum of the syndrome. But so I am Josie's mom, and I am so grateful for my partner Nasha on this journey, because we got on the phone in, when was it, 2016, and just became immediate soul sisters, and just knew in that first conversation that this was going to be our journey together, and that we could change this prognosis. And if we put our career experience and our passion as parents to this, we could make a difference for countless people.
Okay, so take me, before we get into the Fox component, take me there, because when I'm looking at foundations, I typically don't think of like research or moms with like actual science and those kind of academic backgrounds creating a foundation. So how did you guys meet and do this? Also, math is hard for me. Like, and I know that's like a stereotypical female thing, but like, honest to God, it's really hard. I can fix a swallow. I can't do statistics. That just was like not, and my mom was a math major and my stepmom's an engineer. So like, I don't know what happened to me. My sister's got that genes, but like, how did this happen? How did y'all meet?
You want to start, Nasha?
So I met Nicole. She was on a board of another FOXG1 foundation that I met her on and joined. And what you said is correct. Most foundations really are really focused much more on patient advocacy, right?
Yes.
Helping patients with the day-to-day, et cetera. And what Nicole and I realized is, with our condition, because where science is right now, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Like when you think about gene therapy, it's no longer science fiction. Like we are able to go in and alter our own genetic code and solve for disease. And that is happening. We have clinical trials ongoing right now. We see it's amazing. We see antisense therapies that go and target the RNA in our bodies, and our children who were dying have stopped dying. Children who were not able to walk are able to walk. And so we see these things happening. So science is really changing quickly. And Nicole and I realized, for our disease, our small little disease, to take advantage of this phenomenon in science, we had to focus on research. So we really banded with a group of other like-minded parents around the world and started the FOXG1 Research Foundation. And our immediate goal was, how do we advance science, and how do we put the best scientific strategy together? How do we build the most refined and, well-known scientific advisory board with the smartest people? Because we don't know anything, right? So we need to learn from others. And we just became kind of experts in the science. I mean, we learned about biology. We had to go deep in order to even guide our scientists, to even know who was saying what. And we just had to do it. And I think it's any parent who gets tossed in this situation, you just embrace it and you learn it. And so that's really how we got going. And now our foundation actually does both, right? We do both the science, and we do a ton of patient advocacy. And, we have a patient registry. We're starting a natural history to understand the disease and what our patients are going through on a day-to-day basis. So we've really evolved, and we're kind of doing a lot of stuff, basically.
That is amazing. Like, oh my gosh, just wow. I am so honored to have y'all on.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
yay. Okay.
You said something like, we're not scientists. How do we go about starting a research foundation?
Yeah.
And one thing about Nasha and I both is that, and I knew this the moment we spoke, that we are both resourceful enough to figure out what it is that needs to be done and do it. So, and I almost, in my life, I've said, like, pick a card, any card. Okay, that's who I am today.
It's a hat. I say
Yeah.
that about hats. Pick a hat.
hat.
Advocate, piss off mommy. I got this.
Exactly. And so one thing we did have in common is that we were both technology entrepreneurs before this. So in my former life, I was a TV producer. I worked for CNN for 10 years, which really taught me how to go right to the source. So news was a little different back then. It was very fair and balanced back then. But really, it's how do you understand something and be able to tell it in 20 seconds, something very complex. So I learned to be very resourceful. And I think of everything that we've done in our life, and Nasha has said this too, leads us up to what we're going to do. So every job you ever have, whether it was as a waitress or whatnot, it's teaching you skills you're going to need for the big thing, right? And so after CNN years later, my husband and I started a music technology company, and we were entrepreneurs, which we then sold. And Nasha, in her previous career, started a education technology company. So we both have this entrepreneurship in us. So we were able to start this foundation thinking like entrepreneurs and running it like a business. What is the most strategic path? Who are the smartest people? Who are the world's leading scientists? So that we do this in the most deft way, because we are also working against the clock. Josie's going to be 9 next month. So we want to see the fruits of our labor in our children's lifetime. So we really, having that entrepreneurial experience has really helped pave the way for where we are today.
I love that. I humbly think that the triumphs and failures of our past, that's where we learn best, right?
Yeah.
The Yeah, do you know the gold pottery? I'm gonna butcher it. The King's Cow pottery from Japan.
Yes.
And when the pottery, it breaks, and they would mend it and mold it back together with love and infuse the cracks with gold. And I always think that our faults, our failures, our trials, our tribulations, that allows us to shine out, and just as much the joy, like all of those experiences. Yes. Oh my gosh, this is powerful. One day I want to get one of those pieces of pottery, but they're like stupid expensive. So Etsy version it is.
But like you said, everything is a lesson and everything is an opportunity to learn. And
Yes.
and we do really share that mindset, so every hurdle makes us stronger.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with both Nicole and I is we both share that our life is meant for impact and is greater than ourselves. And not to get too like wishy-washy, but we're both very spiritual people, and we take all of, we don't look at our children like this is a problem, right? We look at it as this is an experience, and God's given us this experience, and we're going to make the most of it, and we're going to use it to create change in the world that we live in for the amount of years we're on this planet. And I think, that really helps us when we, one, have issues come at us and hurdles, which happen every single day, like really approach it in a much bigger, calmer way. And two, it just has given us so much purpose, like our lives mean so much now. I mean, we're trying to help these children. We're going to affect not only our own children, but so many more. And that, I don't know if there's a greater feeling of happiness. I mean, it's such an amazing thing to be a part of. I mean, we're grateful that we can be a part of this world and meet the people we're meeting, and hopefully create the change we want to create.
Yes. Okay. right, I need to find out I need y'all to explain what FOXG1 is. But if somebody is not driving, people don't do this driving. But say they're sitting on like a reclined exercise bike and wish to read along on the website. What is your website address that they can look at while we're talking?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we are FOXG1Research.org. So thank you in advance for going to our website. There's a video on the homepage. You could see Nasha and I and Amara and Josie. And really, I do want to say we started this foundation with a team of FOXG1 parents, and it has grown. So as more parents are getting their diagnosis, they are joining our team, and it is just such a fantastic family of FOXG1 parents who run this foundation, not just us. So I just wanted to say that to give credit. And even like the mom who introduced you to us, she has just been such an amazing FOXG1 mom in our world who does so much. And she's truly, like you said, such a beautiful spirit. Every conversation we have, I feel better after speaking to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she always has me in stitches. I'm like, woman, you have to we have to giggle when I don't have a full bladder, because post children, y'all, that's a fitty shot how that's gonna go.
And it's people like that who, I mean, yes, this journey is tough. Yes, we didn't get, that poem about you got Switzerland.
Yes.
So
Holland versus, when you land in Holland. Yes.
We landed in Holland. This isn't what we expected, and it's hard. And Josie has seizures. Josie's fed with a feeding tube, and we will get to your question: what is FOXG1 syndrome?
Yeah.
But it's like if it's the people like your mama friend and Nasha and our team that we can really enjoy life while we handle Herculean challenge, parenting challenge. But anyway, let's talk about what is FOXG1 syndrome, because I believe that's what you were asking.
Yes, no, but that's part of it, and giving us the. Everybody wants the heart of the story,
right?
You know what I mean? Yes. Okay. All right. But yes, please tell us, what is FOXG1 syndrome?
Sure. Nasha, you want to take it away?
Yeah. So FOXG1 syndrome is when you have a mutation, so a mistake, so to speak, in your FOXG1 gene. The FOXG1 gene is a gene that we all have. So you have a FOXG1 gene. Everyone has a FOXG1 gene. It's actually one of the most important genes in neurodevelopmental just progress. So the previous name for it was actually brain factor 1, and that could give you an idea of just how important it was in that critical building block for your brain development. So in our children, the FOXG1 gene, which is also a very teeny tiny gene, it's a single exon, which basically just means it's very small. And they have, different types of mutations. So they could have like a part of their gene missing. They could have the wrong letter. So one of the letters is an A instead of a G.
It's CACGT. What are the? Am I getting the letters right?
Yeah, that's right. And so you have these 4 letters. And so in a missense mutation, like what my daughter has, for example, her G is an A. And you just think about for her, okay, so she has this teeny tiny gene, she has this one misspelling, and look at the impact, right? She's 4 years old. She can't speak. She probably cognitively is at about an 8-month-old level. Unlike some of the children at the severe end, she is able to walk, but she is so incredibly delayed. And this is just from a small misspelling in this one teeny tiny gene. And that's really the power of biology, and also how critical the FOXG1 gene is. So when you have this mutation in the gene, you have what we call FOXG1 syndrome. And that's characterized in some ways very similarly to so many other neurodevelopmental syndromes. So it's, lack of speech, it's lack of fine motor skills and gross motor skills. So on the severe end, children cannot walk, they're in wheelchairs. It's a lack of being able to eat your food, right? Because all of that is controlled by your brain and your neurological system. So something I found fascinating was, as I now look at my other children, just the simple act of picking up a cup and bringing it to your face. I mean, there are so many processes in your brain that have to work for that to actually occur. It's kind of amazing to learn this. And so with our children, those are the processes that are not working because of this single mutation, and it results in all of these kinds of problems. And then medically, you have issues like seizures. We have a lot of movement disorder issues, so kind of similar to what you would see in
Like
Parkinson's.
Oh, okay. So is it like an ataxic CP or like a mixed CP?
Yeah, no, a lot of our kids have ataxia.
Yeah.
A lot of our kids have kind of like the Parkinson's dysptonia, where your head kind of cracks in one position or your arms crack in one position, or their arms are very spastic. So we have a lot of different movement disorder issues as well. It's actually one of the biggest characteristics of FOXG1 syndrome. And we also have CVI, which is cortical visual impairment. And so again, your eyes are, as your eyes are connected to your neurological system and your brain. So all of these effects happen. We have low tone. So most of our kids, their bodies, just the tone in their bodies is very weak. And that also makes it really hard for them to walk, etc.
Can I interject really quick?
Please.
Okay. All right. So for those of y'all that are listening, I want you to think about the little ones on your caseload. Okay. Because one of the reasons why I wanted them on was that we have to raise awareness of this syndrome, but we have to be able to recognize the signs and symptoms on our own caseload so that we can then turn around and request the referrals specific. Okay. So remember, when your kiddos are coming home from the NICU and they're coming home from the hospital, often your predecessor, the clinician that had the little one before you, they may have voiced the concerns but not have been able to follow up with those concerns in the NICU. Or just like Nasha and Nicole said, they didn't really start picking up on these signs and symptoms until they were closer to 6 months of age, right? So think about the developmental milestones between 3 and 6, how in the realm of early intervention, OT, PT, speech gets brought in. And remember, for the cortical vision impairment, the first 3 colors are red, white, and black. So if the child's not reacting to objects being brought in, if they're having a hard time reaching for, securing, finding the breast or a bottle, those are turning towards the source of it. When they're going for something, if you see the rigidity and the spasticity and the movement, also when you're thinking about tone, that correlates to bowel movements and delayed gastric emptying. So if you have a little one that has a feeding tube with lots of residuals, with an unknown etiology, all of these are pieces and red flags that should encourage you to seek the wisdom of a geneticist, of a neurologist, of a good peds GI. Okay, sorry, continue. I just had to do the connection to the clinical piece because it was perfect.
Oh, that's great advice.
No, thank you so much. And one of the things I forgot to mention is sleep disorders. I would say all of our children have terrible sleep. And and it's so.
Is it neurologic apnea?
Nicole, how would you describe it?
I mean, it's hard to know exactly. The sleep disorders, I believe, are neurological, and it's I don't know exactly what the term is for it, but I would say that almost every single FOXG1 parent can attest to sleep disorders, and we're constantly having conversations about what's working for you. I mean, Josie, for one, is she takes CBD oil for seizure control, which also helps with sleep. She's on melatonin, and we started her on doxepin. And there are nights where she will sleep through the night now. But it's very common that from 2 a.m. to around 4 a.m., Josie is just yelling and playfully yelling and just wide awake.
This is what my daddy calls the witching hour. That's when the angels come to play.
So, yeah, they're playing with Josie.
Yes. Bear and Goose would wake up then, and I would say, all right, all you great grandparents that went on, this is not the time. You got to move on, y'all. I got to sleep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes. So sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, and so Nasha was talking about her daughter has a missense mutation, and many of the missense FOXG1 children are on the one end of the spectrum that is higher functioning. and very similar to autism. So it would be like a more severe case of autism is how they present. Josie has something called a nonsense mutation. And how Nasha described how in the genetic code sequence where the A should be a G and it's flipped, with a nonsense mutation, basically it reads the wrong amino acid and creates something called a stop codon. So as the genetic sentence is being written, that has to be written fully in order for it to go on and create the protein to then tell the brain what to do and continue with brain development. As that sentence was being written and it read a wrong piece of it, it put a premature period. So the sentence never went on to be written. So, so those with a nonsense mutation are lacking more of the FOXG1 protein for brain development. So Josie is on the severe end of the spectrum. And so she, as I said earlier, she's about developmentally about 6 months. I know mentally she's smart and I know she understands me. I can't truly explain how, I just know. And but she cannot take care of her basic needs, like use her hands with purpose. She tries. She's tube fed. Swallowing and feeding was too difficult. We tried it for a very long time, and once we got her G tube, we did continue to do 1 meal a day by food because I wanted to try to continue working on the skills. But when she lost her front teeth, she was just at such risk of aspiration. So we had to stop. I mean, the G tube did make our lives much easier, especially with her medicine, because I knew she was getting it at least. But so she is, she's fully tube fed now. She's in a wheelchair, which she cannot control on her own. And she can't sit up without falling over. But she is so happy. She is
Yes.
so cute, if I should say so. And she's just really funny. She could just, I know the things that will make her laugh. And she, like her teacher, when she was going into her classroom pre-COVID, Josie just brings all the joy to this classroom. She just makes everybody laugh. And to me, she's perfect. I'm just so grateful to be her mom. And some people say, so if Josie's so happy, why are you working so hard to change her? And it's a Josie deserves more. They all, our FOXG1 children deserve more. Yes. She deserves to sit up. She deserves to eat pizza.
Yes.
And when we do get to that place where we find this therapy that will cure our children, I know her laughter and joy will still be there.
Yeah, and on the laughter and joy, for your viewers, if any of them are on Facebook and Instagram, they can follow us at FOXG1 Research, because we're FOXG1 Awareness Month is about to start, and we're doing it's basically going to be a day of laughter. Every day we're going to show another FOXG1 child laughing. And
yes, I love that. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, we just thought that would bring some joy to, the current situation of news. So we thought that would be, especially in November, right? This will be very needed.
This is perfectly timed. I am following. Thank you for doing this in advance. Also, wait, before I forget, folks, just so you know, because I know that this is like only 9 days away, but the FOXG1 Parents Connect Live Research Update is on October 29th.
Yep.
Just make sure that it's 9 days from today, so it's within. Your brain can hold that thought and then transfer it to a calendar later.
Yes, that's right.
Putting that out there.
And that's important because we do have a ton of announcements that have happened this month. We're actually in a really exciting phase where, the last couple of years, we've just spent so much time developing our animal models and developing our stem cell bank. And, they have to be converted to these induced pluripotent stem cells and then organoids. And it's all of this work just building your assets. And it's hard.
So I'm sorry, I don't know any of the words you just used, but they sound amazing, and I'm so happy about it.
It's really interesting. I know my husband always says that to me. He's like, no one understands what you say.
He loves when you say organoids.
Or organoids. I know that's his favorite word now. It's really phenomenal. Basically, what they do is they take a little bit of skin, right, from our kids. They'll take it from like under the, like their arm, under the arm, just a little piece of skin. And then what they do is they take the skin, which it's a skin cell, they take it down to its original stem. So that's what's called a stem cell. And once you go down to the original stem, like you can imagine a plant, then you can grow any type of flower. So instead of a skin cell, you can grow a brain cell, a lung cell, a kidney cell. And
this I understand from botany. Okay.
There you go. Yes.
I garden. I'm totally with you. Transfer it to plants and you had me sold.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad I picked that analogy.
Yes.
So you have like in a little petri dish, you've got little brain organoids that have come from skin cells. And now like we can't cut up our children's brains, but we can cut up the brain organoid. And so these are little cells that we can now test different drugs on. We can literally go into them and understand like what are the other genes that are being affected by FOXG1 and how are the circuits working together and what's the impact on the brain and all of the stuff we can do now. It's really a relatively new science, and because of it, so many therapies have exploded. So, but to create that asset takes time. And so all of our poor parents have like, we did a huge fundraising drive in 2017. We funded creating all of these assets, and then everyone's just been waiting, right? Like, okay, now what? And it's hard to be patient. But finally, now we're at the point that these assets are ready and we can start testing drugs on them, right? Like small molecules. We can even start testing like herbs, like Chinese medicine, vitamins. We could start testing antisense therapies, gene therapies, but we've been waiting for all of this to occur. And so that's what the research update will be about. And we're so excited to be kind of starting off 2021 with these huge projects that we're going to be doing.
Right.
2021 needs to be gentler. So I love this explosion. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm thank you for doing the organoid. This is
So, I mean, even to explain that in another way, basically there is a replica of Josie's brain from the skin sample we took from her leg. There is now a 3D miniature Josie brain in a dish that we can use to test a gene therapy on before having to test that gene therapy in Josie. So we could see what happens to Josie's brain in a dish with these, like Nasha said, these potential drugs, these gene therapies, ASO therapy. So it's really groundbreaking science. It's being led at UCSD by Dr. Allison Moultrie, who is just a rock star scientist that is actually been working with NASA, sending miniature brains.
literally a rock star scientist.
Literally. So we are just so grateful for really this consortium of scientists that we have put together, and we're funding and we're raising money to fund, who are actually all working together on these different methods.
Okay. I'm curious, what's the prevalence of FOXG1, or what are the numbers trending like, or how do we know when we see little ones that have the signs and symptoms that you mentioned earlier? Because I feel like what you described impacts most of the patients that I see. And the research that you're doing, I feel like we're not talking thousands, we're talking like millions of children across the globe. So like,
this is true. I mean, FOXG1, it's been cited now in research that the prevalence is 1 in 30,000.
Okay.
So, which is still rare, but it's not as rare as we think. And what you said is interesting. So when any child is having any of these symptoms, they have to be genetically tested, right? I was lucky Amara got the epilepsy panel because she started having epilepsy. And we always say, thank God she had seizures. Sorry, go ahead.
No, what is that? When you say epilepsy panel, explain that. What is the epilepsy panel? What do you mean by this?
So what happens is if your child starts having seizures, most hospitals will then take your child's blood sample and send it to a lab to test for certain genes that could be mutated. And so there's a certain number of genes that are on specific panels. So an epilepsy panel are a known number of genes that they know could cause epilepsy. And, you'll have the microcephaly panel, which is when your brain is smaller. And so that's another panel. So there's a few panels, but the truth is we still don't, all of these genes are not on all panels. So if a child has taken a few of these panels and they don't have a diagnosis, we really recommend getting full exome sequencing. And most insurance companies, if you push them, will fulfill that. And otherwise, there are companies now that do it at a quite cheaper. I mean, the cost of that has really come down. So you could even look online to send it in. But you have to know what the child's diagnosis is, because it really does impact the kind of therapies and treatments you're going to think about giving them. It could be a completely different gene, and it leads to different things. So it's very important, any of the therapists that are listening to this podcast, if you have children that you're working with and they don't know what their diagnosis is, to really help their parents and to guide them to say, look, you have to go work with your neurologist to figure this out.
It's so important. I mean, Josie was the 60th person known in the world with FOXG1 syndrome when I got her diagnosis in 2014. So you can imagine how alone I felt. And I actually thought that I should definitely go out and play lotto that day, because what are the odds? And so, and also, FOXG1 is a non-inherited disorder. So it's a spontaneous mutation of the gene called de novo, of new. So that is even, more odds. But like Nasha said, there are likely so many more undiagnosed cases. Like Nasha said, this is one of the first and most critical genes in brain development. And now, as with more whole exome sequencing testing out there, we are seeing new cases diagnosed weekly. And that's just the ones that we're learning of. So the thought is that the chart of diagnosis is really going to shoot up in the next couple of years. And over the course of time, I mean, if we could sequence, say, the CP community, the cerebral palsy community, and other communities over time, if we could do sequencing of all the patients, we would likely find thousands, if not hundreds and thousands, of FOXG1 mutations.
Yes, I've had the pleasure of working with a little one that has Cass-McPick syndrome. I might have that backwards, McPick-Cass. And they were like one of 217 when they got the diagnosis. And through, over the course of the last 3.5 years, I mean, their numbers have grown because of the advancements in testing and referrals. And one thing that I see, I live in the South, and there are unique things to the South, fabulous things like sweet tea and mac and cheese being a vegetable, but which it is. I mean, for the record, let me put that out there. Mac and cheese is a vegetable, and I would challenge the person who argues that.
Kids must love you. Kids must love you.
Oh my God, I do. My job description is to help kids eat, and in doing so, I eat, which explains why, there's some additional stretch marks to be had. But with that, there are a lot of we still deal with a lot of the isms, right? Sexism, racism, and there is still a patriarchal hold that you do not question a physician because they know best, right? And that's very challenging, because if a physician says this is what it is, or you don't need that, or fear will hold these families back and prevent them from seeking out a geneticist because we don't want our little ones to have labels. But folks, you have to encourage your families. If we get a root cause analysis and we get down to the bare bones of what's going on, then you have the opportunity to develop a quality plan of care for life. And you have a trajectory, and we have an answer. And now we can focus on finding peace and joy on the journey, as opposed to figuring out which plane you're getting off on, right? So just
This is so important. Yeah, I mean, it's there, with any physician, it's really their opinion. And
Yes.
for these types of diseases, you have to seek multiple opinions,
Yes.
and you need to get to the root cause. And I can tell you, even, in my experiences, even with the best doctors, Amara was seen at a really well-known academic center. And when she started having dystonia and was prescribed some pretty heavy antipsychotic drugs that have tons of side effects, and I just decided to try some herbs, okay? And it worked. I mean, it took her dystonia away, has not come back. If I stopped the herbs, it would come back. So I find that A, fascinating, but B, it wouldn't have happened if I had just trusted the first doctor I talked to. I did a ton
Yes.
of research online. I talked to other specialists, and I think this is really important. No matter how good your doctor is, right, they're limited by their own knowledge. And I read somewhere that medical information takes like 15 years to trickle down. So if
Yes.
there's a breakthrough in research, it's going to take 15 years to trickle down to not all doctors, most doctors, right? So you have to, and I think the real thing is you have to put the health of your child above any type of ism. So.
And I think it's really important for parents to know that what they say when they meet with a doctor is actually the most valuable information. So if you have a doctor that's actually listening to the parent, then that's a sign of a good doctor. That's something I've really learned along the way. It's not just, hardly listen to me and then rattle off everything that you've known from your experience. That doesn't comfort me, and that actually has not helped. It's the doctors who hear the things that I say that lead them to, probably what was the most helpful prognosis for us along the way. So when I talk about to parents and for therapists, about advocating for your patient or advocating for your child, it's, don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be afraid to, if you feel something and you see something and you don't feel that the doctor is acknowledging that, keep going. That's the most important thing, because most of the time the parents do know best. And, so that's something that I
Yep.
cannot emphasize enough.
Yep.
Okay, so when we're looking at this, both of y'all have talked about seizures, and seizures being a key indicator. Is there a particular type of seizure? Because I mean, there's so many different types. Is there a
And Josie's are changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of our kids have a series of different types.
Okay. Are we looking at like infantile spasms and then it evolving to like Lennox-Gastaut, or
It could,
Okay.
but not all kids have infantile spasms, right? They will just start developing other types of tonic-clonic seizures, etc. So, we haven't pinpointed a specific seizure linked to FOXG1 syndrome.
Yeah, there's a variety of seizures that parents report on the patient registry. I will say, Josie had tonic-clonic seizures. She was having grand mal seizures before they were under control by medication, and now I'm noticing her doing more absence seizures, which is frightening, because they're so they're hard to know. Hey, that's a seizure. She's staring off. Oh, that could be a seizure. And how often do you use rescue meds? So we're constantly getting blood work and checking her levels. And but for the most part, we really did see a lot of seizure relief with Josie through CBD oil. That was a huge breakthrough for us.
Are you doing Epidiolex, or is it like a holistic variation that you're doing?
It's funny because Josie's neurologist, Dr. Davinsky at NYU, led the study for Epidiolex.
Wow. Oh my God, that's amazing.
And you know what? And that's how I found him, actually, because I learned of the study happening, and I wanted Josie to be in that study, but it was only for children with Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut.
Yes.
But I was able to start her on Charlotte's Web.
Yes. Oh my God, we have talked about this so many times. Oh my God, yes.
An amazing company. And you know what? I never moved off Charlotte's Web, and I never moved to Epidiolex because it's been working. So when she was having horrific grand mal seizures when they first started in around 2014. And then at best, while they were under control, and I'm doing air quotes right now, she was still having 4 seizures a week. But once we
Ugh.
started CBD oil, we went a year seizure free. So I couldn't believe it. I couldn't have even imagined a week without a seizure. And then we went a year. And then she has breakthrough seizures here and there. And now some of these opsons, things are starting. But you're always tweaking. It's like a recipe, it's like
But
the
that's
medicinal recipe.
yeah, yes,
Mhm.
but that's the same with pharmaceutical approaches to seizure
Mhm.
management. You have weight gain, you have height gain, and then or weight loss because of maybe a change in medical baseline, and then yes, you have to alter accordingly and adjust meds. So
Exactly.
yes,
Mhm.
folks, this is why you have to the pharmacological approach to seizure management can cause some horrific pediatric feeding disorder complications in their own right, such
Mhm.
as severe and profound xerostoma, uh, gingivitis, but it's like a hypervariation of it. I can't remember the name of it. It's on the tip of my tongue. And I mean, irritation, depressed respiration cycles, decreased appetite. And the truth be told, the CBD approach has less side effects.
Mhm.
So please bear that in mind that when you have a child that has a seizure disorder, if we're in the process of finding out if it's FOXG1 or not, then one, we need to pursue genetic consultations, but also do your research on drugs and dysphagia and how they influence the safety for PO.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, I wish any parent whose child starts having seizures would actually start on CBD oil and some herbs before going on to more intense medications. And the thing is that doctors can't prescribe CBD oil, right? They just can't do it. So they're never going to recommend it. So you have to kind of do that work on your own as a parent. And then also the amount of THC does make a difference. So with the ones that Nicole's talking about, there's very little THC, and so you're able to order it online. But if your child is having really severe seizures, like we see for Dravet syndrome, they actually do require more THC. So I know there's a company here called Jaden's Juice out in California, which was started by a dad whose child has Dravet syndrome. And it's a 1-to-10 ratio of THC to CBD. And that for kids who have really out of control seizures has actually helped control them. So you have to do a lot of research and look around. But I personally would recommend that before starting a drug that's going to be very hard to get off of and has a ton of side effects. But I'm
Okay,
not
so
a doctor. I'm just saying this as a parent.
yes, absolutely. But do you think that the medical community is moving? I mean, y'all know these researchers. Do you think that we're moving in a way that in the next 10 to 15 years we could see that being a more managed approach?
Well, the thing is that there's no money in CBD, right? So Epidiolex has become a drug, and so there's money in it. So the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry it's like it's a commercial entity, right? So it's going to
Mhm.
be, you're not
What?
going
It's a commercial entity?
to,
What?
it's a big
I'm
one.
so surprised. Ah.
So it's like herbs. Like who's going to go fund a trial for, 10,000 patients to take an herb and like check how they develop and check their sites of toxicity? I mean, there's no money in it, right? So you do see researchers, like I did here in South America, that there was a group of researchers that did a trial for CBD oil, and they had a group of children with different neurodevelopmental disorders in different hospitals conduct a trial. And that was done in a very academic setting. So I think academically we'll see more and more studies come out. But because there's no money behind it, I don't think we're going to see it as mainstream. But what gives me hope is that Epidiolex, we are seeing organizations try to expand the label. So right now it's prescribed for Dravet syndrome, but there's groups lobbying with the FDA to expand the label so it could be prescribed for more neurodevelopmental syndromes. So that is promising.
I have wondered about the expanding of the label and expanding of the ages, because last I heard the Epidiolex was 2 and older
Mm-hmm.
was the age range for it, because I have a little one that has Wolf Hirschhorns, and they were trying to get the Epidiolex approved, and insurance wouldn't approve it until the kiddo turned 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the little one turned 2, it was like night and day difference in seizure management. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it is nice to have insurance approve it because it is expensive to buy CBD oil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have, oh my God, we have talked on so many different things. I love y'all. This is fantastic. Okay. So talk to me about feeding therapy. What are some of the common feeding issues for our children that have
You know
FOXG1
what? Could
syndrome?
I actually interject with something?
Yes, absolutely.
One of the most common effect, like the most common symptom of FOXG1 is lack of speech. So the majority
I
of our
had no
kids,
idea of that.
yes, lack of speech. So actually only 60% of our children, as we know right now from our patient registry, suffer from seizures. But almost all of them have a lack of communication and speech. So what's interesting,
That's our world. So yes.
that's your world. And you know, what's really interesting is for me, it took me like nobody guided me, and it took me forever to get Amara's ABA diagnosis. And that has changed the game for her because number one, we have 20 hours of therapy that our insurance is paying for. And many people think that ABA therapy is just, you know, kids with high functioning autism, but it's not. It could be really tailored. And so Amara is low functioning. She doesn't have behavioral problems, but she can't speak. And so her entire ABA therapy is designed around helping her with communication. And without that ABA therapy, like her speech therapy is, you know, once a week. And through COVID, we haven't even had that. But our ABA therapy is continued. And it's really, I think that has been the strongest point of her progress. But it was so hard for me to get it. And I think that's something, you know, for people listening on this call, that if you have children who have a total lack of speech, they can qualify for ABA therapy, and it can be tailored to their needs.
So, fun fact, in South Carolina, we pay the lowest payout rate for ABA therapy in the nation.
What does that mean? So it's not available?
It's not available because the reimbursement rate for ABA therapy, I think, is $45 or $48 an hour. But by time they pay for the training for, you have like the ABA, the certified therapist, or we don't even offer a license for it in the state of South Carolina because South Carolina. So they have like, there's different tiers, and you have to have your BCBA. Then you have like your lead therapist and your line therapist. The line therapist, when I've talked to some of my friends that are BCBAs, because I have a delightful friend who's getting her PhD in autism research here in town at USC, and her wife is actually a speech pathologist, which is very unusual because typically there's a lot of tension between BCBAs and speech pathologists because it's like, who controls the language? But they have like, not to play on words for marriage here, but like they do have the perfect marrying of understanding that, you know, ABA understands the behavioral component to it. And the speech pathologist, when like we bring in like our subject matter specialist of like language acquisition, when it's done right, beautiful things can happen for these kids. This should not be I was here first, this is my approach. It really truthfully, and we've actually had episodes talking about like the overlap of BCBAs and SLPs, but like it really should be done together. But because the reimbursement rate for it is so low in South Carolina, the wait list in our state alone is like in the 20,000s.
Oh my God. You know what? The wait list here is really bad too. I mean, Amara was on a 2-year wait list. I mean, I can't, like, what other industry has so much demand and no supply? It's just like bewildering to me.
And for us, it's been the larger insurance companies, because the larger insurance companies don't want to pay for it. Dun, dun, dun. Yes. And then they lobby to keep it out. Okay, we went political. Back to the month of smiles. I apologize, folks. Michelle has an opinion on a lot of things, but we're going to focus on the month of smiles that are coming for the month of November and circumvent all other conversation on that. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so we need to do like an off the record conversation. Just kidding.
Right.
Okay, so then talk to me. So we have the speech deficits, but what does the feeding component look like? Because I've heard you say that Josie has a feeding tube. Does Amari have a feeding tube? What is our continuum here?
She doesn't. She does aspirate, so we need to thicken her liquids, but she
Okay.
is able to eat with her hands. So, that is the spectrum. We have children who can eat and then children on a feeding tube. And so we definitely do see that spectrum.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so not beautiful, but you know what I mean. So that's
Yeah.
what we need to be prepped for.
But learning to swallow is a big deal, even for Amara, and we haven't been able to get really good therapy around that, is helping her learn to swallow correctly, which is, leads to the aspiration.
And folks listening, that ties into the ataxic motor movements as well as the low tone component, because there are precursors to being able to control the musculature involved in this. So if you have a little one that you're working with and you have tried natural progression of thickening, going from like a puree and trying to taper, like a tapered weaning protocol is the technical term for it, and you can't get down to a thin liquid, or you're trying to progress from a pureed food to, I'll go in national dysphagia diet terms because most of us haven't switched over to ITSE, but you're trying to go from like puree to like mechanically chopped and advancing the foods, that it makes it very, very, if you're not seeing a progression or you're seeing a regression or it's compounded by seizures, these are other indicators that, hey, something else is going on. In the absence of change, we need a second opinion, y'all. So don't take that on yourself of, I am failing as a therapist. Something else could be going on, and we need to seek to understand what that component is. Yeah, soapbox.
We tried and tried with Josie, and we did make some progress. And like you said, the absence of change. There was, as her seizures were progressing, her ability to eat just became too difficult. Yeah.
I have a motto, and I wrote it into the book. It's called "Fed is fed is fed is fed," because whether that be completely total perinatal peri-enteral nutrition like TPN, or if that is in G tube, orally, OG tube, G tube, GJ, J, growing and being able to hear the laughter, that's the purpose. If our babies are not getting nourished, then they will never be able to share their joy or be ready to do the next step, right?
I love that.
Yes. Yeah. And so fed is fed is fed is fed is fed. So we have to celebrate that.
And it's hard for parents to, pull the trigger and say, okay, we're doing the G tube. I hear it from so many parents that we try to avoid it as long as we can. And I said, my poor little girl is suffering when I try to feed her. It would take me an hour to get a half an avocado into her. And so, I sort of surrendered to it, and she's being fed and she's thriving.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so is there a prevalence of food allergies within the FOXG1 community? Because our little friend that we know mutually has eosinophilic esophagitis, which, I mean, I've seen that on the rise, that diagnosis of EOE. Is that common within FOXG1?
Allergies are not something I hear much of. What about you, Nasha?
No, I haven't. No, but that's interesting. Is something to keep an eye out to track.
Right, and maybe add to the registry.
Yeah.
I would be curious about the prevalence of EOE, milk protein allergies, and celiac disease. One of my future sister-in-law, and my kid brother better not cock this up, but my future sister-in-law is a lobbyist for the National Down Syndrome Society, and she was sharing with me that the patients that have Down syndrome, 25% are genetic carriers for celiac disease.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
I mean, that,
yes.
Oh, wow, the gut-brain connection is pretty strong.
Yes.
So that's very interesting.
Yes. So I'm kind of curious. I would we have the primary allergens, dairy, wheat, soy. I mean, those would be ones that I mean, if you guys have a data bank, please add that to the data bank, because that would also help those of us that are working with registered dietitians and looking at like what formulas, whether it be Like, do we need to break something down to an amino acid level? Can we do blenderized tube feeds? Do we need to avoid, because whey is like the hidden dairy that people don't really talk about. And so that's a component that I would
Okay.
fret over.
That's a great input there. Thank you.
Unsolicited nerd girl advice.
Love that.
Important at it.
So then I have, with our 2 minutes left, because we got sidetracked on all the other wonderful things, what about what therapies? For those of us that are in the trenches doing therapy, say we're the first person in because we get called in for feeding, what therapies are, and in ABA, but what other therapies do y'all recommend, or does research tell us that we need in order to support little ones with FOXG1?
All of them. So and all day long. So for Josie, we really focus on the PT and the OT the most. My goal, I hope, is for her to be able to sit up and put her arm out if she falls over. Her speech therapy is very critical, and it's not ABA, it's SLP, and we have an SLP, but it's critical and so important, and it's just consistency, and as much as we can possibly do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. PT, OT, and some type of speech
and vision. Yeah, really all of them.
Really, yeah.
Vision therapy, because of CVI, real quick, with her vision therapist, I gave her the book on CVI and said, this isn't low vision, this is CVI, and there's different training for it. And so she read the book, and Josie improved on the CVI scale dramatically by following the CVI therapy rather than low vision therapy.
Yes.
So there is a difference, and it has really, I think, really changed the way she can see.
Yes, my brother-in-law has a microcephaly, cortical vision impairment, cerebral palsy, and autism spectrum disorder. So I understand what that looks like at 43, sassy with Transformers. So yes.
Yeah. There's Christine Roman Lancy in Pittsburgh, who wrote the book on CVI. And if anyone has an opportunity to go see her, if their child has CVI, or they do, she is incredible.
Do you know her? I want to interview her. Could you introduce me?
Oh, you have to. She's incredible. I drove to Pittsburgh from New York and brought Josie to see her. And it was just this world of understanding of what it actually is and how to treat it.
Yes.
Yep. I will connect you.
Oh my God, bless you. Thank you. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, all right. We've gone over. And we were worried would we talk for an hour. Ha ha ha. Okay, so folks, again, the October 29th, so 9 days from today, go to register at FOXG1Research.org. They have their update going on. When you log in, there's a donate now button, but tell us one last thought before we switch out to questions, because we do have to go to questions. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want folks to know?
The hardest thing for us in this journey, and the most important thing for us in this journey, is asking for donations. Nobody wants to ask for money, but we cannot fund the science without it. And right now, for this stem cell project that Nasha was speaking of, we have to raise $1 million for it. And so fundraising, the science is there. The science is in place. It's amazing what could be done. There are, people are being cured. People with blindness can see again. We are living in this revolution of science. We just have to raise the money to fund these brilliant scientists. So if anyone has any extra or would like to support, or knows anybody who is looking for somewhere to park their philanthropic dollars, it will go somewhere that will actually really make a difference. So
yes. And also, this scientific advisory board is like a who's who of brilliant minds, because I'm like on the page now and just wow. Yeah. Well, Thank y'all so much for joining us and for and being so candid and honest about your walks. That takes bravery. So thank you. Hold on one second. I'm going to switch this over to questions, okay?
Feeding Matters guides system-wide changes by uniting caregivers, professionals, and community partners under the Pediatric Feeding Disorder Alliance. So what is this alliance? The Alliance is an open access collaborative community focused on achieving strategic goals within 3 focus areas: education, advocacy, and research. So who is the Alliance? It's you. The Alliance is open to any person passionate about improving care for children with a pediatric feeding disorder. To date, 187 professionals, caregivers, and partners have joined the Alliance. You can join today by visiting the Feeding Matters website at www.feedingmatters.org. Click on PFD Alliance tab and sign up today. Change is possible when we work together. That's a wrap, folks. Once again, thank you for listening to First Bite, fed, fun, and functional. I'm your humble but yet sassy host, Michelle Dawson, the All Things Peds SLP. This podcast is part of a course offered for continuing education through speechtherapypd.com. Please check out the website if you'd like to learn more about CEU opportunities for this episode, as well as the ones that are archived. And as always, remember, feed your mind, feed your soul, be kind, and feed those babies.